When a middle-aged man suddenly loses weight, it usually means one thing: a Tory leadership contest, at least according to Boris Johnson. And press speculation about which candidates are taking Ozempic to slim down during the race led Tom Tugendhat to denying its use and Robert Jenrick to confirm he had taken the drug. But why are MPs taking the same celebrity weight loss drug as the Real Housewives? Why are journalists obsessing over it? And what do the answers to both of those questions tell us about the importance of image in British politics? Ozempic, and other semaglutides like it, were originally developed to treat diabetes.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic.
But they had the side effect of subduing appetite, leading to their prescription to treat obesity. But increasingly, they're being prescribed cosmetically, rather than out of medical necessity, particularly via private prescription. And currently, there's a global shortage of the drugs.
The drug Ozempic has been a bit of a life changer for lots of people, certainly for people living with type 2 diabetes. It is a hormone replacement, so it helps with insulin production, and it also helps to make you feel fuller for longer. So for people who are looking to lose weight as well, especially with type 2 diabetes, some weight loss can often help. So it works on two fronts. If you can't get the drug and you've been relying on it, it is very, very difficult. And people get quite upset, and I think understandably so, because they're seeing it being sold, online, and they can't get it even though it's been prescribed to them. And it's a difficult one. Things should improve over time as they produce more. But yes, I think it's a hard one to take on when you've been put on a drug that you like and it's working for you, and then you can't get it.
Some former MPs have been incredibly candid about their use of the drug. Nadine Dorries even posed for before and after pictures, while Boris Johnson admitted to having to stop taking Ozempic after suffering some of the nastier side effects. Interestingly, he also described his inability to lose weight the old-fashioned way as a moral failure, a weakness in the face of temptation. In a culture where weight is viewed this way,
watch out, massive fatties, the lard police are in town. Too much time sat on their fat bums, that's their problem.
has asking a politician if they're taking Ozempic become a journalist shorthand for ascertaining something about their willpower? Perhaps this is why some MPs don't want to be open about the subject. I posed this question to culture writer and editor Samita Mukhopadhyay, who's written about her own experience taking the weight loss drug Mounjaro.
Kind of become as much of a medical intervention as it is a cultural phenomenon, I think.
Why do you think that Boris Johnson described his inability to lose weight as a moral failing?
So, I mean, I think fundamentally we live in a society that does look down on weight gain as a moral failing. We think it's quite lowbrow it's a sign that you're lazy, that you don't have self-control. It kind of is a physical manifestation of all of our anxieties as a society, that we're, lazy, we're not modern, we're not, wealthy. I think what's interesting about his comments is that he's saying the inside part out loud, right? And it's hard to really know ultimately why people need Ozempic unless you look at their blood work, right? There's so many things that we blame ourselves for as individuals that are actually cultural or systemic issues, right? The obesity epidemic is caused by many things, right? Access to whole foods, access to grocery stores, access to a culture that doesn't medicalize and demonize fat bodies, access to a culture that has some kind of representation of larger bodies, right? Or the idea that like you are allowed to exist in that body. And so I think that does force a lot of larger bodied people to internalize quite a bit of shame and believe that it's a personal failing.
Were you surprised to see this drug being taken for weight loss jump from Beverly Hills into the realm of politics?
No, I mean, I think, politicians get Botox, right? Like, I don't think it's, I think that when you are a public person, you will, and you have means, like you will take anything at your disposal to kind of create a persona that feeds into how you want to present yourself publicly. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I think that, it's interesting to me that politicians are taking it when like many of their constituents need it for medical reasons and can't access it. And I think that that's where, it's not, I don't really judge people for taking it at all, for like, it's like your body, you decide what you want to do with it. But I do think, the panic around it has created this kind of desire to have it for thinness when ultimately like it is a pharmaceutical intervention to an actual disease.
You mentioned the systemic factors contributing to weight, yet how we can individualize those as moral failings. Something I've been thinking about is whether the press's obsession with asking if weight loss is down to Ozempic is almost codified language for asking about willpower or self-restraint.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think it's an attempt at a gotcha question that's like, hey, we noticed you were never able to be thin. Why are you thin now? Like what's the reasoning? And it's interesting because I think it's also forced a lot of people into the closet. Like I think a lot of people are taking Ozempic and they're saying they're not, right? Like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I've just been dieting and exercising. And let me tell you, having been on Manjaro and also doing the diet and exercise, like one gets better results than the other. It's just how it works.
I thought or hoped that with the body positivity movement, we as a culture had moved away from obsessing over people in the public eye's weight. Now Ozempic's come along and it feels like there's new permission to speculate about weight gain and loss. What do you think this says about the state of the body positivity movement and if it's failed?
I mean, I don't think the movement has necessarily failed per se, but I don't know how successful it was in the first place, right? I think that for us to, I think that we were making some progress, right? We were definitely, you're definitely seeing more variety of sizes of clothing in stores. You are seeing like more variety of body types, like, maybe not as much. I mean, also on the runways as well. But it's true that since, these drugs have become popularized, a much more thin aesthetic has being peddled in the mainstream. Obviously, that has an impact on women's consciousness, especially young girls, and how they feel about themselves. And so, but I don't necessarily know that that had changed that much. I think that body positivity itself also became something you had to be really good at, and people were like forcing themselves to embrace their bodies even when they may not necessarily have been. And so yeah, I think that, and I also like really feel like we need to move to a place where we see, taking Ozempic could be a body positive for you, right? Like it could be, and that's something that I've really reflected on in my writing on the topic is, I really felt like one of the difficulties I had in deciding to go on this medication was I felt like I was betraying body positivity. I felt like I had done all this work to love myself and I didn't really, but I had to pretend I did. And but I was also having these health problems. And for me to be truly body positive, to have true ownership of my body and what my body needed, it made sense to go on this drug for a little while. And then that was a really, and I knew I'd be criticized. I knew when I wrote about it, I'd be criticized, and I was. And I don't think that like a movement is successful if it's that easy to lose membership to it, right?
Image is important in politics. I don't think that's a surprise. But perhaps the moral values that we ascribe to weight and weight loss can go part of the way to explaining why the press is obsessed with which Tory leadership candidate is taking Ozempic.